listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is August 24th, 2023, and my name is Spencer Downing. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing this fine Thursday?
Well, Spencer, hello. Happy hardcore day to you.
Yeah,
I'm doing well, and we're not going to get into it too much on the meat of the show, but we do have classic hardcore servers opening up a little bit later today, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So that's pretty cool. That's it's a thing that the classic team has been baking here for a while. So it's the next big WoW release, and I think I'm going to check it out a little bit since we got the announcement that if you die you can transfer up to a classic era realm. So that's cool. But problem is with the servers coming up at 6 p.m. I'm going to have stuff to do tonight, so I probably won't be playing tonight. But a cool thing about this is I think with that out the door, it's time to really start the big marketing push towards 10.17 and hopefully sooner than later a 10.2 reveal, because we know we got that PTR coming soon. We're 2 weeks away from 10.17 patch, so how far away could 10.2 PTR be? 3 weeks, 4 weeks? It's imminent. So we're about to get, I think, a lot of WoW info and stuff now that we're sort of past that summer release window.
Yeah, I think we're actually getting right into the big hype cycle, starting off with this hardcore stuff that's coming out today. Or came out a couple days ago. Just getting used to it being Thursday. But as far as we have the September 5th release coming up, and then I think we're going to be rolling from that into PTR and announcement stuff towards BlizzCon, and it's going to be nonstop. I think we're just on the cusp of the roller coaster, if you will.
Yeah, we really are at this point. We've been saying that for a minute here, but now we're getting there. We got a big release today, and we got another release in 2 more weeks, and off we go.
Exactly. But before we dive too far into World of Warcraft, let's talk a little bit about the people who make it. There's been a bit of some news around the whole ABK Microsoft merger stuff that's been going on. And Jason, you want to bring us up to speed on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was some big news the other day. I think it was Tuesday. We know that the last kind of domino to fall has been the UK market for Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard. And a big concern that their Competition and Markets Authority had was about the impact on the streaming market for gaming. So in a, I would say, somewhat bizarre twist of events, they have restructured the agreement, the acquisition agreement, to include a clause that when the merger closes, the cloud streaming rights for all current and new Activision Blizzard PC and console games for the next 15 years, they're going to go to Ubisoft in perpetuity. So there you go. We sort of mentioned that maybe they'll license stuff to a third party or whatever. It's kind of like that, but it's sort of like a reverse license almost. I mean, this means that if the cloud streaming market is probably pretty small at this point compared to more traditional methods, but if that grows, then Ubisoft is positioned in a spot where they have all of their own library plus every Activision Blizzard game released in the next 15 years forever. If you want to stream that 30 years from now, you'll have to subscribe to whatever Ubisoft is selling you to be able to do that. So that kind of was a surprise. I thought that was a really weird twist on the deal, but maybe that will make the CMA feel a bit better about the acquisition if the cloud streaming thing gets spun off and Ubisoft is, competing in that space. Microsoft notified the CMA about the restructured transaction, and they're anticipating that the review process can be completed before the current acquisition agreement expires on October 18th. If you remember, that was supposed to close in July, but because of some of these holdups, and specifically with the CMA review, they agreed on a 90-day extension. So basically, as long as they get the go-ahead from the CMA before October 18th, then they're going to close the deal. and basically Ubisoft is compensating Microsoft with a one-off payment and wholesale pricing on the titles, including potentially usage-based pricing. So that gives Ubisoft some flexibility regarding, I guess, which games they're offering and what they're paying and everything like that, and how much, I guess, ultimately, like how much profit they're making off of operating the service and distributing these games. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, this was the big complaint that the CMA publicized about the deal, and this is a sweeping agreement, right? Like it's international. It's in perpetuity in a 15-year window of releases. So I don't know. I mean, we've talked a lot about how this deal is fraught, right? There's a lot of things to not like about this, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I would like to see Blizzard's developers and studios be able to work under a better corporate structure than the one that they've had with current Activision Blizzard leadership, which is clearly not working very well for a lot of the employees or for the customers, honestly. So that's really the only thing for me that I hope this gets done, and that the employees have better working conditions at the end of the day, which will result in better products for us to play. So hopefully this goes through. And the only thing about this, I guess, reading it, is I hope that once the deal is closed, that there are no new Activision Blizzard PC and console games, because let's just make Activision and Blizzard separate entities under the Microsoft umbrella, please.
I was going to say, what a big sneak would that be? Oh, well, yeah, sure. Yeah. They could have it in perpetuity for the next 15 years. We just won't publish under that particular brand anymore.
I didn't really mean it on that level. Just like, okay, if it's an Activision or a Blizzard game or a King game, I guess, I don't know. Fine. Okay. Yeah, that's Ubisoft streaming property, but please, can Activision and Blizzard just be, split apart forever, please?
It'll be 5 or 10 years from now when we start hearing about the Ubisoft Microsoft merger only taking place.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh boy. I mean, that is certainly the way the industry's been going. Yeah, it just keeps whittling down. But this has been, when was this announced? January of 2022, I want to say. It's been over a year and a half that this has been percolating. So hopefully, from my perspective as a player and a customer, that this just gets resolved and over with, and we move on to the next phase of the company and whatever happens. So
right, yeah.
I guess we'll know. I guess at this point we'll know one way or the other by October 18th, because the CMA is going to say yay or nay, and then they're going to do whatever needs to happen from there.
Yeah. This is one of those weird third-party things of having to actually use an Ubisoft platform to play Microsoft games will be very strange. But it's how they got around the legalese of it all. So we'll see how it ends up, I guess, being delivered into our hands, because that's what's going to matter the most for the user experience. As long as the user experience remains good, I guess that's what matters most to me. So I would imagine Microsoft won't let Ubisoft do a bad job at doing this, but we'll find out what this all looks like. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think also, I didn't include it in my notes here, but I think there was some language that like Ubisoft can, relicense the games to other platforms or whatever. Like NVIDIA's got like a burgeoning cloud streaming service and stuff like that. So the whole idea here is just to make the products available on your service of choice, I think. So I mean, that's ultimately good for players, for customers. So that's a good part of this, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, what did you end up getting into this past week in World of Warcraft? I know Kalimdor Cup has been a big thing on everyone's mind, and everyone's been experiencing and enjoying. I was out there flying around on Goro Crater and everywhere else. It's a lot of good time.
Nice. Yeah, I said to the show last week, like, I'm going to check it out, but I don't think I'm going to try to gold everything. And then by like Thursday night, I was like furiously trying to finish up the last 2 golds I needed for the achievement and the title. But I just got into it. I had a lot of fun with it, and I love those zones. Night Elf main for life back from 2004, and Kalimdor is where I lived. That's, I don't know, that's a lot of my earliest experiences and fondest memories of old school WoW is there. And I thought some of the races had really cool layouts, like the one in Faralos where you fly through Dire Maul and everything. That was super cool. So yeah, I had a great time with that. Although there were a couple races that I think are tuned a little tight. I had some issues with
little tricky branches maybe that were catching you a little bit here and there.
Nah, a little bit. Yeah, I didn't have too much of a problem with those really. Like the one in like Duratar, I think there's that one where there's like a dip and then there's a white tree on like right near the ground, and you got to like immediately dip and then zoom back up. But no, it was reverse encourage was that one was really tight, and that took me a little while to really optimize it and get it done. And advanced Unguro Crater was just brutal. I think the first time I did it, I felt like I had a pretty good run, even though it was my first time doing it. And like, obviously you need to practice a little bit and, you know, shave your time down a bit. But my first run through it, I was like 6 seconds behind the gold timer. And I was like, how do I
figure this out?
How do I shave 6 seconds off of that? And then I had a couple runs where I was like less than half a second over the gold timer. And I was just like, I don't think I can do it any better than that, you know, but eventually you just kind of zone in and
you have that golden run. Yeah.
That's all it takes is one, then it's done. And so I got the title. I got the on the main, I did it all in the Warrior for the title. And then I used the badges to buy the Mog set, but then you end up with like 14 extra badges, which I thought was weird. Couldn't you let me end up with 25 extra badges so I could buy one of the manuscripts? But, it was what it was. And then I went through on 4 other tunes. You get the 10 badges for doing the quest, right? So one of the rewards, the scales, the scales are like 50, and then the other 2 pieces are 25 each. So, that's not that much if you get the 10 for free on different tunes. It's one tune you got to do a little bit on, and then 2 tunes you have to do almost nothing on, and then you can buy out the vendor. So, so that was cool. As far as other stuff goes, I mean, it's been now like basically 2 raid weeks since we've spoken last. I mean, we've been pretty consistent with getting Sark kills in on Heroic and clearing 3 and 9 Mythic. Last week, we didn't really have what we needed for Mythic Prog, so we didn't even look at experiments at all last week. But, we got a couple new ahead of the curves last week. Sunday, we did Black Temple Time Walking, which was super fun, super fast, just very friendly tuning, it felt like. We got through it in, I want to say about an hour. Black Temple is a big raid, just physically. It's a lot of space to run around in, and, it's not really streamlined paths from boss to boss either. So we were not spending a lot of time on bosses. We kind of just chunked through it. It was fun. It was a really nice change of pace. Nobody got like Ashes of Alar out of the cache or anything, but whatever. I got like a pet I didn't have, and people got some gear.
I'd like to point out that when I said Ashes of Alar on last week's episode, I was just throwing it out there as a guess. And then we found out 2 people got Ashes of Alar from our Discord. I was like, cool.
Yeah. I heard from some other people that got Ashes too, or like we're in a group with one of their friends got Ashes or whatever. So, I mean, I thought it was a great night of just, doing chill stuff. And also I forgot that they changed the weekly quest to do 5 dungeons. You can also kill 5 raid bosses for that, for the quest. So, that was a nice double dip, and I felt like the tuning was very friendly. It's time walking, so your gear doesn't matter that much. It was cool. And we ended up doing normal skip to Sarkareth after that, but didn't really get anything cool last week. This week, I'm done with raiding for the week, so I'm going to be away on Sunday. But, we went and did Sark right away, and then we turned around and started up Mythic, so we cleared back through the first 3 that we know how to kill. And we actually had a really good night of Prog on experiments last night. We were getting to the point where we were almost killing second boss, which then the fight ramps down a bit slightly after you kill the second boss. So that was encouraging. We hadn't pulled it in like 2 or 3 weeks, so to have a really good night of Prog felt nice. And also, one of our evokers got the Cracked Titan gem from Heroic Sark on Tuesday, so that's cool. I think we just have one evoker main left that's been running with us for any length of time that doesn't have it, so hopefully he'll get it soon. And yeah, that was cool. And then, Mythic Plus stuff, just I've continued to try to at least get a few keys in every week. Last week I ended up doing like 8 keys, 9 keys, something like that. I got like a full vault worth of 20s. I actually got a 21 in time for the first time this season in Vortex Pinnacle, which I thought was going to be a nightmare because the bosses in there are so hard and the timer's pretty tight. But yeah, I ended up timing out the 21 Vortex. And
Very nice.
this week is a great week. We'll talk about it more later, but this is a fantastic fort week. And yeah, I got 4 keys in so far. I timed another 21. I forget which one. I think Underrot we did this week, and we did a couple other 20s and stuff. And very good week to push rating if you are still shooting for something. This might be the last time we see this combo this season.
Oh, no.
Might be. Obviously we don't know exactly when we're going to get it, but we know it's a 10-week rotation. So
Yeah.
could be the last time around for this, but this is like a fort push week if there ever was one. So dungeons were feeling really good the last couple weeks, actually, which is nice. I mean, I don't really have any super big motivation to run them other than I just like the gameplay, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't need any gear. I'm not going to hit any huge new rating milestones. I'm not going to get the title. I have nothing left to unlock that the system actually presents me. So I just do it because I like doing it and I like playing with my buddies and doing dungeons. So it's nice when the affixes are fun to play.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose my oh no is a little premature because it means we'd have new content, which would then be exciting as well. But it is nice when you hit this, like, what I was envisioning was, oh man, we just had a great Tyrannical week and it's followed by a great Fortified week. That's so rare that we have the 2 weeks in a row of good affixes for stuff to go with. So I'm sort of like, one more would be nice, right? Like one more round just to make sure everyone who wants to push can push during those 2 weeks would be a nice thing for them to do.
Yeah, and we might get it, but it would maybe I feel like that might run into the very end of season 2. But yeah. If you have time to put into dungeons this week and you still need stuff out of the system or you need like fort rating, don't pass this one up, I would say.
Yeah. All right, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the Battleground bonus event, meaning the Sign of Battle buff is up, increasing honor gains from Battleground objectives and wins by 50%. And of course, there's a quest you can pick up to complete 4 random Battlegrounds, which get some Marks of Honor and Conquest. So be sure that you're picking that up before you get out there. This is just a nice event for anyone who's trying to get any kind of honor. It's just a really easy way to gain a whole bunch of honor easily. So that combined with the PvP brawl being Arathi Blizzard, Arathi Basin being one of those places that is pretty easy to queue into inside of a brawl. Now, it isn't technically a random battleground, but again, it's not the hardest brawl to do. It's not the most irritating brawl to do. It is kind of cool, Arathi Blizzard being the one where they basically have a snowstorm happening inside Arathi Basin, and you can cross the water because the water's frozen, and it obstructs sightlines from places like Lumber Mill, so you can't see down to Blacksmith. That kind of idea. So yeah, it's a decent week for people who want to hop into the battlegrounds and do some PvP and get that stuff done. Your PvP quests are Epic Battlegrounds and Rated Arenas. So if you want to pick those up before you get out there into the world, and also don't forget to pick up your Fighting is its own reward if you're trying to gear up a tune. Get yourself some 415 gear or 15 Drake Shadowflame crests from completing 5 heroic dungeons. And of course, there's the Aiding the Accord. If you haven't picked that up yet, you're behind because it's Thursday. But be sure you grab that so that as you're earning reputation out there in the world, you're working towards cleaning that up a bit, which would be very good. Zukali Elders are, of course, the world bosses up, down in the underground in Zeralik Caverns. You can get yourself some 415 gear off of them. That's plate, shoulders, and waist, mail, feet, and head, or leather, chest, and wrist. So any of that being good for people who want to actually put together some tier pieces if you haven't gotten your full piece yet, your tier set together, which by now you have a ton of charges for, so start spending them, because you're probably getting towards cap if you haven't been. And Bascaron the Shale Wing is the Earth Proto-Dragon who's up in Waking Shores, dropping 395 loot. So your plate, chest, mail, wrist, leather feet, cloth waist, and a Mastery Crit neck. Again, for anyone who's trying to get that extra bit of gear to get them over the top, or maybe unlock some new content for them, or just want some transmog. It's all out there. You can grab it all. Mythic Plus affixes, as Jason mentioned, this week are Fortified, Storming, and Bursting. So non-boss enemies have more health and deal increased damage. And while in combat, there's whirlwinds that appear, damaging whirlwinds that appear occasionally that spiral around. You have to dodge and avoid or soak. And bursting is when slain, non-boss enemies explode, causing damage over time to all players. within the area, and it stacks, and it lasts 4 seconds, and it can be really dangerous. But if you handle it well, which it sounds like Jason did inside of that Vortex Pinnacle, then, not something you need to worry about very much. So how'd you do it, Jason? How'd you do the Vortex Pinnacle 21?
Oh, well, I didn't do it with storming. I did it last week. So, yeah, Vortex Pinnacle is maybe a bit of a harder one this week because...
I was going to say, like, it already has wings.
The trash in there is beefy, too. So, like, Fort Trash in there, you're going to be in combat with it a really long time. And, yeah, there's already a lot of area denial, and the storming graphic looks a lot like the attacks of the mobs in there. So, you got to be careful. Storming is mostly disruptive. It's not super damaging, especially if you can mitigate the fall damage. But you do have to pay attention to it. Bursting, can be rough, but it is dispellable these days. And you can also, if you have like self-healing or whatever, you can help your healer mitigate it. Just got to pay attention to it. You just don't want to have like a bursting tick stacking up over and over again the entire time you're in combat, because eventually somebody's going to die from that, and it's going to snowball from there. So just pay attention to it. If something's like about to die and you have like a second left on 4 stacks of bursting, just wait and then push some buttons when bursting goes away. I feel like bursting is nowhere near as punishing as it used to be a few expansions ago. Maybe like they've gotten smarter about which mobs burst and which ones don't when it comes to, they have this kind of texture with mobs in a dungeon where it's like, okay, here's 3 elites, or here's 5 elites, or like here's 1 big elite and 6 non-elites. And it used to be that a lot more stuff would burst and cause all kinds of weird problems, and now it's mostly just the stuff with a fair amount of health that bursts. So it's a little easier to manage in terms of your expectations and reacting to it. It can definitely cause deaths, don't get me wrong, but the affixes are there to make the dungeons harder. And I feel like this week's combo makes the dungeons not as hard as other combinations make the dungeons. So, there are still, I do think storming is somewhat dungeon dependent. It is going to be harder in a dungeon like Vortex Pinnacle compared to, I don't know, maybe Brackenhide Hollow, right? Where there's a lot of room to kind of reposition and everything like that. So, those are the things to keep in mind. There's not really very many comp concerns here. Like, I guess if you can grab like a priest or something for mass bursting dispel, like that could maybe be nice, especially if you have like a big pull set up and everything gets cleaved down all at the same time. But that is so niche. I feel like that's not going to be the difference between you timing a key or not up into the 20 range. Yeah. It's cool if you could do it. Yeah. It's cool, but some weeks are way more comp dependent, especially with I feel like the new affixes are unfortunately like very comp dependent, and these are not new affixes, and your comp does not radically affect how you play around these. So it's a fun week, man. It's really a really nice one for Keystones for sure.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to diving into it. It's going to be a good week to actually check out some of these dungeons, some of these Keystones, and yeah, I'm with you on Vortex Pinnacle. I very much would not like to do storming in Vortex Pinnacle because, as you said, everyone's attacks kind of look like vortexes anyways. So it's just wind with your wind. Would you like more wind with your wind?
You're fighting vortexes that are shooting vortexes at you, and the dungeon is also spawning vortexes around you.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Kalimdor Cup is live for 4 more days, although I'm curious what they plan to do with the Eastern Kingdom Cup, whether they'll do that and then they'll bring them both back, or what their plan is for all of this. But you have 4 more days to make sure that you get the rewards that you want to get, the transmogs, the achievement, the Kalimdor Racer achievement, the Drake Watch manuscripts, and the transmog for the pieces of the Drake Racer Dragon Riding transmog set. And yeah, the races are up all over Kalimdor. There's a couple zones that have 2 of them in it. Mount Hyjal has 2, Southern Barrens have 2, Thousand Needles have 2. But the nicest thing is all the NPCs, if you haven't done this yet, when you talk to them, will actually do one of those put a flag on your map things for the one you want to go to. So if you just sort of like show up and go, hey, what's the nearest zone? And go, okay, well, I'll just click on that person and ask them, where's the one in Ashara? And they go, okay, well, here it is. And you go, great. And you fly out to it. And then you on your normal, slow, boring flying mount, you fly out to it. And then you get on your dragon riding mount, you do the race course, and you feel great. And then you get back on your slow, boring flying mount, and you go to the next one. That's pretty much how it seems to be working. So be sure that you take advantage of the Kalimdor Cup while it's out there. It's a good time.
Yeah, it really is super fun. And I just love revisiting, the old content. And again, like, I can't stress enough, if you haven't been out there, like the tech that they put in 10.1.5 to update the draw distance and the fog and lighting in the old zones, it looks incredible. It's so cool. It almost looks like a mod, like back in the day, it'd be like, oh, somebody posted on YouTube this fan-made mod of how this WoW zone would look in a different engine or something. It almost looks like that, except it's actually in the game. One thing I want to also suggest, if you haven't done this yet, or if you've done it a little bit and maybe haven't been super successful, by default, I believe that the Kalimdor Cup will have you just fly around on the Highland Drake, which is one of the bigger, if not the biggest, drakes.
Yeah.
But you don't have to use that drake.
Nope.
And I do think using the big drake makes it a little bit more difficult. So you can either, in Valdrakken, you can talk to the NPCs over by the rostrum, the one like not where the vendor is, but the one next to him, the night elf dragon that always sends you on the quests for the races. And he also has the breadcrumb quest. You can talk to him to change your riding drake. And you can also, at the races, there's a little whelpling floating around. It's the one that you talk to find get pointed towards a nearby race. You can also change it there.
Yeah, that's what I did. I changed over to the Slither Drake from there.
Yeah, so go like Slither Drake or the Cliffside, whatever it's called, Drake.
The yellow one, yeah.
Yeah, they're much smaller than the Highlands Drake, and it gives you a little bit more wiggle room for avoiding hazards and stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did, and it definitely made my life a bit easier. So
that's how you got that 0.5 seconds off of your gold. You shaved that down.
Yep. If I was on the Highland Drake, I never would have done it. So that's like not super obvious that that you can do that, or B, that it really matters, but I think it does. I think it's just way easier to avoid hazards and get the times that you're trying to hit on the smaller drakes. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. All right, as far as hotfixes go this week, they fixed an issue where Sunfire and Moonfire were not updating quick enough for receiving a mastery increase from the external sources. So like your trinkets and things like that going off, or someone boosting your mastery, for example. That's a problem. Obviously, glad they fixed that, because that's a huge amount of damage, since especially mastery damage for Moonkins affects your dots and how hard they tick. So that's very bad. So yes, glad they fixed that. Guardian got themselves some Ursoc's Fury reduced to 45% of the damage dealt was 50, so 5% absorb reduction off of Ursoc's Fury. And Innate Resolve bonus to Frenzied Regen was reduced to 120% from 150, so 30% reduction on that heal from Frenzied Regen for those Guardians out there getting a little bit of a nerf. Demon Hunter, Havoc, I-Beam is no longer interrupted by school lockout effects. So they're actually putting the I-Beam off of any kind of spell school. You can't lock them out of Fel and have them not be able to I-Beam. So keep that in mind as well. If you suddenly start feeling like you're trying to min-max in some PvP and someone's I-beaming you regardless of what you're doing, that's what's happening. Vengeance, Fel Devastation is no longer interruptible by school lockout effects. So yeah, same thing. Fel Devastation is falling into that same category. So keep that in mind as well. All right, mages. Man, they fixed an issue that caused mass invisibility to cancel inconsistently with no direct actions taken. What did you like sneeze? Is that what was happening here? You're just like, you're walking along mass invisible and you sneeze and you're like, oh, no longer invisible. Everyone knows where I am.
Yeah. Does that count as taking an action though? Maybe.
Is that, it's involuntary. Is that does that count? I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah. I didn't hear the mages that I play with complaining about this, but, that's not what you want when you're invis. Yeah.
Fire mages got themselves some nerfs as well. Flame strike damage and flame patch damage got reduced. The incendiary flames can now only proc once every 10 seconds, up from 8. And conflict damage reduced by 10%. The developer's note here is fire mage damage in heavy AoE scenarios is still higher than we're comfortable with. We intend these adjustments to further rein it in. I just want to say fire damage in general is not something I'm comfortable with. If someone's going to damage me, I'd prefer it not to be fire damage. So, if the devs aren't comfortable with it, maybe you're not supposed to be. It's just maybe.
It is damage, yeah. It's not. It kind of implies a level of discomfort.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Guardian a second ago. Here's Fire Mage nerfs.
Yeah.
It's just more nerfs to the Mythic Plus God comp, which I want to point out that despite all of the nerfs, did not change representation around Great Push at all.
Nope.
All of the specs that have been repeatedly nerfed the last few weeks in order to, I guess, attempt to rein this in at high levels has not made a difference. I mean, part of that is just the amount of time teams spend practicing the comps, right?
Yeah,
at a certain point, it's like,
classes.
okay. Yeah, it's like it's still good enough that nothing is clearly better or whatever. Plus, we have the the synergy from practicing on it.
Well, and it's not who they're balancing around. Like, let's be clear here. This isn't who they're trying to balance around. I mean, Holy Paladins also got damage reduced by 10%. Like they are recognizing that yes, this is as you said, the God comp that people are currently into in the meta and using, and they're trying to make other comps more viable. But when it comes to the Great Push, these guys are going to do whatever they do, regardless of what Blizzard's tweaking around with classes and this kind. They're not going to pull an Audible and suddenly get a Brewmaster Monk in there instead of a Guardian Druid. Yeah.
No, yeah, especially when there's cash money on the line. But I feel like Blizzard's been heavy-handed with nerfing the God comp specs, and I'm not really sure what benefit it's serving, other than making players that play those specs feel bad. I don't play one of those specs, but I'm okay with stuff being strong. I think the problem sort of becomes that. It sort of becomes in some ways like a perception problem.
It is, for sure.
Where it's like, okay, well, the players know and or have learned and or have been told that these are the specs that you take.
Yeah.
And so, if you don't play the spec, then you can't get invited to pugs. And if you're playing anything other than these specs, you're doing it wrong. All that is completely untrue. If you're trying to time plus 30s in a competition scenario to win a 5-digit sum of money, then yes, you need to make compromises about what you're playing. If you're logging in to have a good time with the game, you can play whatever you want. It's not like the tuning is that far out of whack that you can't do plus 20s or something, even if you want to go all the way up there. I've timed plus 20s with all manner of off meta specs this season, including my own and the only one that I play.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's a perception thing, and I think that's why they keep making these little tweaks here and there to these specs and just saying, okay, well, maybe this other thing slides in a little bit, or maybe the perception shifts and people don't feel like this is the only correct answer. And I guess I get the logic in that regard to some degree, but the people that I know who play Holy Paladin or Fire Mage are just sad because their shiny new toys have already had the shine come off of them a lot. And it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, this always echoes my brain back to, I think it was during Cataclysm, of BlizzCon during Cataclysm, where Ghostcrawler got up on stage and was talking about class balance. And one of the big things he brought up was how viable and good Ret Paladins were. But the issue was no one was playing them. So the sample size was so low that the few people who were playing them weren't playing them very well. So it didn't look like they were performing very well because there were so few people playing them that these top tier people who are playing, whatever the meta spec was at the time, weren't the ones who were looking at Ret Paladin and trying it and seeing what happened with it. And it was just an interesting, point to make of when everyone just drifts towards what this very small group of people are doing, and the small group of people might be doing it for whatever their reasons are. It might not be because the numbers are the best. It might be that this Guardian Druid guy just really loves Guardian Druid, but that creates a meta, right, that everyone drifts towards. And until someone's willing, who has the knowledge and skill base and strength of, being able to think outside of the box, we're talking about that, when we're interviewing Sloot, that kind of thinking, you might not know that Ret Paladin was actually really good in the current state that it's in, or something like that, right? And it's an interesting thing to sort of go at. Now, back then, obviously, there was a little bit less of this tools and everything else for measuring stuff, but it was neat to hear a developer talk about that same issue that you're sort of getting at of, yeah, you can be viable on pretty much anything in the game at the moment. They've sort of gone through and fixed a lot of stuff up to a point, right? And yeah, sure, if you're trying to push plus 30s, obviously there's going to be some more min-maxing and importance of, decision making that has to happen. But in general, everyone's viable at the moment when it comes to going up to plus 20s. So it's just about getting good at your particular class and spec and making sure that you're learning the dungeons well enough to be able to pull it off. All right, let's move into Rogue. They got themselves some increases in damage for Assassination. Prot Warriors, defensive stance damage reduction reduced by 5%. So that's a decent drop in defensive stance stuff, which you're not using, if I understand correctly, Jason.
Well, I have been now, and so this is a confusing change because it's at first glance it looks like a nerf to a thing that already wasn't very good. It's actually a buff because it's not reducing your incoming damage reduction. It's reducing the reduction to the damage you deal. So defensive stance used to make you
this better. This is terribly worded.
It is a salad.
There needs to be multiple punctuation. There needs to be like 4 commas in this. Defensive stance's reduction, comma, to damage dealt, comma, has been reduced to 5% from 10%. Is what that.
I don't know why you don't just say something like defensive stance's damage penalty changed to 5%. Or something that would make more sense to me.
Sure.
Reduction to damage dealt reduced is bizarrely redundant, and it makes it sound like something it's not. But defensive stance before Tuesday made you deal 10% less damage. Now it makes you deal 5% less damage.
All right.
Yeah, so that's pretty good, and it got a pretty significant bump to defensive power in the last patch. So I typically use defensive stance for stuff where I'm actually in danger because I'm not like a great player. I'm good at what I do. Like I enjoy the game certainly, but I'm not like a super optimized, if you look at my logs and stuff, like I'm an average player at best. So having that passive damage reduction just saves my life constantly. Especially in like 20 keys or mythic raids or whatever. And now I'm doing more damage. I'm reducing more damage from it since the last patch. I'm dealing more damage. So I've been using it since the last patch. And a couple other changes that at a glance seem weird, but are not, they're little buffs, just little tweaks. Spell reflections damage reduction increased to 25% was 20%, which again is worded terribly. It could just say like spell reflection now reduces 25% damage instead of damage reduction increased to. But yeah, so spell reflect is, it's one of the coolest parts of the Prot Warrior toolkit because sometimes you can put a really nasty debuff or a dot on a boss. Sometimes you can, reflect a projectile back at a target. And sometimes if you can't do that, you just take less magic damage for a window. And now you take more, you take less of that magic damage than you would have before. So is it like a game-changing balance adjustment? No, but trying to nudge Warrior a little bit. It hasn't been very popular this season. And it's like, well, we're nudging Guardian in this direction. Let's nudge Warrior in this direction. Also, Vanguard got an increase. It's like a passive stamina increase, like a stamina buff that's just kind of baked in. It used to increase your stamina by 30%. Now it increases your stamina by 35%. So this one is very minor, but it looks like a big number. Oh, it's 35% now, right? It's like stamina is good. You should have stamina. Most of your gear is going to have stamina on it, right? Like you're going to get stamina bonuses from various sources. Ultimately, you want to be reducing the damage that you're taking, especially as a warrior, so that you're not relying on your health pool. But a bigger health pool is probably better. It's not like there's any downside to it. It's just like the class isn't really designed around having like a massive health pool to replenish or whatever. So, little tweaks, but I'll take it. I didn't really notice these changes this week, to be honest. But I'm glad that they're there. I mean, I like dealing more damage and taking less damage. I'll take that anytime.
Yeah, all right, certainly. It's the wording is what drove me nuts there, but yes. All right.
The wording is very bad. And at first glance too, like I looked at it in like a Discord embed or whatever while I was like getting my kids out of the pool the other night. I was like, why are they nerfing me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I like sat down and read it in the actual blog, and I was like, oh, okay, these are really terribly worded notes, but these are, some nice little buffs.
Yeah. Creatures that can detect stealth and invisibility are now immune to effects of Mind Soothe inside dungeons and raids. So that's going to be a spicy one for some folks who are counting on that strategy-wise. Above level 20, each additional keystone level will now increase enemy health and damage by 8%, down from 10%. So they're actually making it easier to do those higher keystones for folks who want to actually push a bit higher. We've recently made and are currently making a number of adjustments to specs that were particularly powerful in Mythic Plus. And while we feel these changes will have the desired effect, we also heard concerns that it may be much more difficult to complete very high keystones and achieve ratings that were previously within reach. We think this is a fair concern, so we're making a temporary adjustment to the scaling of key levels above 20 in hope that it provides some players with the space to continue competing for Mythic Plus rating before the end of Season 2. So since they specifically say this is temporary, I would say the assumption is that for Season 3, that will go back up to 10% because balancing will be different and all the standards are different. So they're going, hey, yes, you're right, we've been nerfing the God comp, and people who were like, hey, I could easily do a 22 or a 23, and now I'm struggling to pull it off with the exact same strategy because of the nerfs that happened. They go, all right, sure, I understand that. We don't want to change, basically the level at which you were playing by nerfing your class like this. So let's, change how health increases and damage increases to sort of balance and compensate. So I think it's a good change. I think it makes sense. Let's, keep it consistent for Season 2 at least a little bit. But I'm also with Jason in the sense of, why not just buff every other class? Right? Like, I understand it's a lot of work, but right. just bring everyone else up to being powerful and keep the standard, that standard. Yeah.
I mean, I like this change because I think the per rank scaling has been too high lately anyway. I think it'd be cool if the temporary adjustment here was that this was only above 20. And next season, just make everything scale up by 8% per level. I mean, 10% per level is very clean, right? It's understandable at a glance, right? Like what you're getting into as you kind of scale up. But yeah, I mean, I think this definitely shaves the edges off of the God comp tuning changes. Because yeah, like you said, it really doesn't feel good if like you used to be able to do a thing and then because of tuning, now you're doing less of a thing, or it feels like it. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I like this. We had a lot of conversations like at the end of Shadowlands and the beginning of Dragonflight about like, okay, we now have a fully rotating dungeon pool, we have a seasonal affix, and we have kind of brutal per rank scaling. Like, do we really need all of these things in Mythic Plus? And we've gotten rid of one of them. So I don't know. I think this season has felt pretty good. And I mean, I got through all of my rating goals pretty fast. And then teleports were just sort of I got them quickly once I was able to just assemble people within my guild to, just let's go smash these dungeons and get it done. I was sort of, the group that I had been used to running with kind of fell apart, and I was playing with whoever was around to play with, and that was cool. But we weren't getting our way towards teleports. I don't think they were hard this season. I think I was just sort of in flux where I didn't have the right pieces to play with. So I don't know. Maybe we don't really need the lower scaling overall. I guess we'll see what happens with the next couple seasons, because now we've seen every Dragonflight dungeon as a keystone. We know that we'll get Dawn of the Infinite next season. So what else do they do? How else are they around the rest of the season? Will there be returning Dragonflight dungeons or something else? And, I guess we'll see. But I don't know. I like them including this as part of the overall tuning, right? If we're going to nerf the classes, then let's still give everybody a chance to, push keys.
Yeah, I definitely feel like this is a solution that at least addresses that problem to a certain level, so I appreciate seeing it. There were also some changes to Mythic Plus dungeons. Halls of Infusion, Glacial Proto-Drake, Deep Chill effect now damages Deep Chill now damages affected players every 2 seconds as opposed to every 1 second. This reduces the damage, obviously, by 50%. So that's a pretty big deal for folks who are having trouble dealing with Glacial Proto-Dragon's Deep Chill. Legacy of Tyr, the infinite Time Reaver's Stolen Time cooldown increased to 8 seconds, up from 4. So this is a massive cooldown increase for this. And developers say, heard feedback that certain dungeon creatures' abilities can feel oppressive for groups without access to Mass Dispel. And we're hoping these changes make the abilities feel more manageable for those groups. So Yeah, I mean, obviously, doubling something's cooldown on how often how often this infinite time river stolen time can happen is massive, which means you'll probably see it half as much if you see it more than once. So that's big. I'm glad that they are addressing things like that. Good to see.
Yeah, I mean, these abilities are pretty punishing in these dungeons, especially as you get up higher. And so, yeah, that niche for Master Spell was maybe a little too specific, right? Because it sort of becomes maybe the only way to handle a specific thing, as you kind of scale up to the top end of your group's abilities. So, I mean, these are good changes. I think they make these mobs more counterplayable against for every other class. If you have a priest and you can mass dispel this stuff, it's even better now than it was before, right? Because like it's not even as dangerous, so you have more of a window to use the mass dispel or not, or whatever you want to do. And if you don't have access to a mass dispel, then you have other counterplay options, to kill the dragon or to LOS around the Time Reaver or whatever you need to do. So, yeah, that's I think when you want to have mobs that are dangerous, right? Like it's pointless to have a dungeon where nothing is going to hurt you anyway. There's no challenge. There's no difficulty curve. That without anything to play around, it's not really that fun. You wouldn't want to go back and do like a level 30 dungeon all day long at max level. Like that wouldn't be satisfying. So you need to have stuff that's dangerous, but then when you have these types of abilities that create these little pocket pick strategies, I think that's a thing that they're trying to smooth down here, because we've had the dominance of this comp since 10.1.5 came in, I think they just want to open it up more to like, hey, like another class is good too. They have like different tools, but they can still do this dungeon with you. And that's what we want. There are, how many classes are there? 13 for a reason. Yeah. There's supposed to be variety, and different specs are supposed to be able to all do the same content together.
Yeah. Aberrus the Shadow Crucible, Echo of Neltharion, they reduced its health by 5% on Mythic difficulty, as well as the Voice of Beyond's health has been reduced by 5% as well. And Ebon Destruction's periodic damage over time was reduced by 10%, along with Shatter's periodic damage. They also fixed an issue where Neltharion may fail to apply corruption on players during Phase 2 on heroic and mythic difficulties. So we got big, mythic nerfs. This is them going, hey, you know what? We are probably just a few, as you said, maybe less than 10 weeks out from the next chunk of content coming out. So maybe we should get people through this mythic content so they can get to farm and have a good time, kind of thing, right? Let more people see it. Glad to see some of these raid nerfs coming in. Yeah, do you want to talk
I feel like they've had a pretty light touch on Aberrus since launch. Like I feel like it has been adjusted less than many recent raids, although it also launched quite a bit easier than other raids, I feel like. And also with the item upgrade system, it helps people get over the difficulty curves a little bit faster. None of those are bad things in my opinion. But they should still be monitoring kill rates and stuff and making adjustments for teams that are still progging. And actually, the fix here for Heroic, for Neltharion failing to apply corruption, this is really good. Because I've had issues where sometimes Neltharion just doesn't do corruption. And without corruption, you can't progress Phase 2 of the fight because you can't kill the ads. So I guess I haven't noticed it too much lately, but I definitely didn't run into it this past week. You need corruption to go out. So I'm glad that they are keeping an eye on that. We definitely had polls before where it's like, okay, well, if corruption ever goes out, then those players please kill the faceless ad and no one else kill those players. Thank you. Maybe corruption will cast at some point, and then maybe it does or doesn't. So, yeah, good fix there. And I mean, these seem like pretty big nerfs to Echo of Nelth. I mean, the health reduction, and anytime you have a health reduction that big, overall to a boss, that alone is probably going to result in a bunch of new kills this week.
Yeah, it's why I was saying I think they're really trying to push to get people into farms so that they can start having a break. Because that's the issue with a lot of people who are doing mythic content is just prog week after week after week after week for months and months just drains a team dry. Like you need to have those, okay, we've accomplished our goal, we've completed the content, we are now in our relaxed period where we've gotten the bosses down to the point where we can kill them in a night or 2 nights as opposed to the 3 or 4 that we were raiding. We start giving people time off, let them recharge. So the next wave of content is then something that people can dive into again. So without doing that, you just risk running into burnout, which is not something you ever want to run into with a raid team. So yeah, I'm glad that they're addressing that as well. Scale Commander Sarkareth, the Berserk timer was increased to 8 minutes, up from 7 minutes and 30 seconds. So an extra 30 seconds of time will make the difference for a lot of teams as well. They also, the Echoing Howl damage per tick was reduced by 20% on Mythic. Empty Recollection, oh my goodness. Empty Recollection health reduced by 17% on Mythic difficulty. Blaspheme Scream cast time increased by 25%. They did scaling changes in normal and heroic difficulties for Astral Flare. The duration increased to 33 seconds, up from 30 for 10-player groups. Oblivion damage per tick reduced by 10% for 10-player groups, and Void Surge damage reduced by 20% for 10-player groups, as well as Astral Eruption damage reduced by 60% for 10-player groups. So this is the other thing, right? Going through and going, hey, you know what? There's these smaller teams who are trying to kill, Sarkareth. We got to get these teams through. What are the things they're struggling on? Let's pinpoint those if it's based off raid size, right? If you don't have enough healing cooldowns in your group to sustain through this damage because you burn through them and they're still on cooldown when the next wave of damage comes out because you don't have 15 people or 14 people, that's a problem. So let's address it, right? I mean, increasing the amount of healers and reducing the amount of DPS means the fight takes longer, which then runs into other problems. So, you need to have some things addressed here and there, and this is them going at it. So I'm glad to see it because I appreciate those 10-player groups. I really enjoyed being on a 10-player group back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been doing my weekly Nax Ramus clear for the Scourge Stones to trade in for the tokens of the new vendor. And I remember fondly my days of 10-man Nax every week. But so a couple things about these changes. Our compatriots and Death Jesters had like a 2% wipe on Mythic Sark last week. So I guess that means they're set up pretty well for a kill this week, but it is kind of sad that they couldn't quite get it before nerfs came in. But obviously Blizzard looks at the rates and they want to adjust the fight to land at rates that they're comfortable with. I think these are really good changes for small groups. I haven't done Sark with anywhere near a group this small. I haven't done a 10. I don't think I've even done like a 12 player. I do think Sarkareth overall is one of the easier end bosses we've seen in a long time, since maybe G'huun, even though G'huun was a logistical problem to solve almost every week. Sarkareth doesn't really present that kind of a challenge, but there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of mechanics and overlaps and stuff. And so you need people handling all of these different things. And I mean, something like Oblivion, there are parts of the fight where everybody in the raid is going to have Oblivion ticking on them. You know what I mean? That could be a lot. If you're two healing it, that could be a lot for your healers to cover at certain points of the fight. You are going to lose a lot more relative uptime when people are handling certain mechanics than you would in a 20-player group or bigger, right? So I think this is cool. These bosses should be accessible. This is not new content. There is very little prestige left to be had from killing normal or heroic Sarkareth at this point in the tier's life cycle, right? Like, Sarkareth at this point on heroic has been killed by a higher percentage of Aberrus raiders than Raszageth has been killed by Vaulted Incarnates raiders, and that lasted an extra 2-3 months. I guess call it 2.5 months from where we are now. So obviously, teams that have stepped into heroic Aberrus have done well with Sarkareth, but like, you are going to have that brain drain, like you're kind of alluding to, right? And you are going to have attendance drop off and stuff as the tier goes by. So groups are going to shrink in size. So I think these adjustments are cool. I mean, we talked a lot, not as much in recent years, but in the early days of the show, when we took it over, about the group size scaling and how certain bosses were like much harder with bigger groups or smaller groups or what have you, so having these kind of like really pinpoint fixes, I think, for these abilities, it's good to see. I mean, I think if you're going to have scaling rating, then you need to be smart and flexible with how it gets tuned around group sizes.
Yeah, you really do. Group sizes are going to be the thing that actually keep the game alive, is these smaller groups. That's where players kind of thrive and have the most fun a lot of the time, because it's hard to get 20 people together, 23 people on a team to maintain a team. That's really what you need, is that roster of 22 or 23 people. So yeah, I think it's going to be something that, we see how the content balances out, and if they need to do more changes, hopefully they do, because we want to be sure that going forward, all the content that comes out is something that's accessible for all group sizes. Because yeah, you're talking about going back and doing Naxxramas 10. I was thinking of doing Siege Orgrimmar, right? Like that was my heavy duty 10-man raiding days for sure. I mean, yes, I did it back inside the Naxx days too, but like we cleared that place twice. We progged Siege Orgrimmar twice. I did on 2 different classes. I was healing one and DPSing in the other, and we did a full prog with our team the first time, killed it, and then turned around. Everyone switched to alts, and we reprogged the whole thing on our alternate characters because we just had such a good time as the 10 of us. So it was definitely a good time, and I want those groups to live and stay alive and have fun and all that sort of stuff. All right, Kalimdor Cup is open, obviously, as we said. But it's now open to players level 30 and above. So if you're level 30 and above, you can actually hop in there, so it's a little bit more accessible. NPCs have been added to Orgrimmar and Stormwind, so you can actually go and get your quests and then spend your winnings and that sort of thing. Time rifts, the rift boss health now scales down to the appropriate amounts when confronted by fewer than 5 people. Yes, good, thank you, because these events are going to die off in popularity, particularly on the 5th when new events come out. And so if there's, only 3 people going in there, it sucks to feel like you're just going to go up against this big wall. So I like that it's going to scale down with fewer than 5 people. Lich King, apparently, is getting some changes. Remorseless Winter and Defile damage reduced by 50%, and Remorseless Winter's slow effect reduced by 40%. People want to get their Invincibles reigns, and so they're just making sure that it's easier to do it than it was before. Here you go, guys.
No, this is just the Rift boss.
I know. I'm teasing. I just thought it was hilarious. I'm just teasing.
Don't get people's hopes off.
Fine. Okay.
So, yeah, a thing I wanted to say about the time rifts change is like, and I meant to mention this on the show last week and I forgot. If you have stuff you want from the time rifts vendors, you better go get it over the next couple weeks because it's really going to start to dry up in terms of people participating.
Yeah.
It already has been because honestly, like these rewards are not complicated or difficult to get. You just have to make sure you show up for some time rifts, on the hour, which is the annoying part. So yeah, if there's stuff you care about, make sure that you are doing it now because once 10.17 comes in, it's going to be harder to do it, and you're probably going to be less motivated to do it when Dream Surges offer better rewards. So I would say if you care about it, spend some time in the next 2 weeks doing that. I think it's a little spooky that the fix here is Rift bosses, they scale down when they're confronted by fewer than 5 players.
Yeah.
Perhaps we need some better sharding where that can never be the case. Like, can we put some more players together? I know at first there was problems with there was too many people. That lasted about 2 weeks. It's WoW. Like, people move on with their lives.
Yeah.
Like, you should not be building shards where bosses are getting confronted by fewer than 5 players, first of all. But it's good that they are changing that because that could be a real slog if you end up, in a deserted shard.
Yeah.
Also, the Lich King was like a bizarre outlier. He was just so much deadlier and harder to kill than any of the other time rift bosses. And primarily, I mean, obviously Defile is like a legendary mechanic for all time that was a pug killer and everything like that. And this is like a full outdoor public event. You can't expect anybody to really know what they're doing, but
be paying attention.
Yeah, but Lich King was just brutally hard compared to the other bosses, which is not really what you're looking for in outdoor content. So good changes, but yeah, if time rifts are on your radar still, like, do them now before it gets worse.
Yeah, it's going to get worse, so be sure you're taking care of it. All right, Neltharion's Call Neltharion's Call to Dominance primary stat buff is now removed upon starting an encounter in or Mythic Plus dungeon, so people were no longer able to get a bunch of buffs and go in because that's something they never wanted. In Solo Shuffle, there were a bunch of 2-piece bonuses for 2-piece bonus sets that weren't working or weren't resetting. When you actually queued into another round. So if it had just been procced and you queued into another round, it wouldn't actually reset properly between those rounds. That's been fixed. So for those solo shufflers, there's some good news for you. I'm glad they sort of got in and did that. There was some balance passes for PvP as well for your class. So be sure you're checking those out if there's something in particular that stood out to you as far as PvP goes. Just, it being a highlight for your particular class. We don't play them all, so we wouldn't really be able to speak too predominantly to the power of those, but be sure you check it out. Professions, cooking the empty kettle of stone soup and hoard of draconic delicacies should now correctly transform into their completed feasts when enough ingredients have been contributed. Well, that's frustrating if that was not happening, unless it was happening too early, in which case, why did you fix this? I don't know which one this was, Jason.
Yeah, I'm not exactly, I didn't run into this, I guess. I can't really speak, or if I did, I didn't notice it.
Yeah.
We don't really use these, I guess. Like, we use one of my, super, dedicated farmer players always has a stack of feasts on them. So we haven't been using the kettle type stuff where like everybody contributes stuff and then it transforms. But so I don't know if this means that like they weren't transforming at all, or if you had to put more feasts or more ingredients into the feast than you should have based on the UI or what. I didn't encounter the bug, so I don't know what it was doing, but I assume that it was probably not working out in the player's favor.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it was like transforming too early. That's not what I gather from this note. So it sounds like it was just like bugging out and wouldn't transform, which, like, if you contributed the ingredients to, sucks because they're just gone then, I guess. Yep. Right, if it never transformed. So it shouldn't be a concern at this point, luckily.
Good. As far as PTR goes, we did get some changes in here for druids, restoration druids in particular. They had all their healing reduced by 6%, but hold on. But they did that because the new ability coming in, called Grove Guardians, the new talent, is going to represent a fair amount of healing. So they're kind of saying, yeah, you know what, we're going to reduce your overall healing because this new ability we're giving you is going to be powerful enough that it's going to basically balance out your throughput, is how they sort of see it. If you're curious what Grove Guardian does, basically you drop down a little treant helper Healy friend who then heals players around you and casts Nourish and whatnot on those players. So as long as this is balanced out, I don't see an issue with the overall healing reduced. It does kind of drive people towards taking a talent like that and using a talent like that, but we'll have to see what the meta sort of says and balances out with this. I love the idea of a druid summoning a treant to come in and help them. I just think that makes so much sense character-wise that it's kind of cool to see the class fantasy happening with that.
Yeah, totally. It's very flavorful and very like core druid fantasy to me, like in terms of Warcraft, right? Like a Warcraft druid and what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows if it's going to end up being good? I mean, it seems like the developers expect it to be good, and sometimes when that happens, they'll tune around it being good. So maybe if it lands kind of flat, they'll pump it up a bit. But yeah, this is one of those things where the headline comes through, on Wowhead, like, oh, PTR notes, Resto Druid nerfed, and it's like, well, kind of. Yeah, I felt like that was a bit misleading the way that they publicized it, which is where I saw it initially when the PTR build notes came out, and it's like, this is the goal here is not to reduce Resto Druid's overall healing. The goal is to, incorporate this talent into the play style and, hopefully not have a change in overall throughput, but just, change up the style. So, I mean, I love the idea of it conceptually. So it would be cool if it is preferable, if it's a good talent and you just see some treants running around healing people and stuff. Like, I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, I think it would be too. Okay. Events coming up. August 31st is going to be the Secrets of Azeroth sort of event that's going to be taking place. Basically, they say players will be tasked with putting on their thinking caps to uncover who is behind a recent string of artifact thefts through a variety of daily clues. With the last clue revealing itself on September 13th, you'll need to keep your eyes peeled for daily secrets and tantalizing new rumors, and even play a little follow the leader with some of your favorite community creators to discover some of the secrets of Azeroth. So to discover some of the secrets Azeroth has to offer. We know reward-wise, they have this like goggled thinking cap thing that's sort of like goggles with like a crazy technology cap on you. It looks like if you're trying to mind control someone, this would be the device you'd use to control them. There's a torch, the Torch of Pyreth, which is this cool torch transmog you can carry around. A Titan key, which is a weapon transmog. And, most importantly, the big rewards being Patty the alpaca and Tobias the pet. Tobias is a small little pup wearing this like cute little like Sherlock Holmes sort of hat on him. It's very
like
cute.
a deer stalker.
That deer stalker hat. Yeah. So like definitely worth picking it up. So you have, basically you can get yourself your own deer stalker hat, and then you can get yourself the llama with the hat and the pup with the hat. Very cute. Interesting event. The part that piques my interest the most is daily rewards between August 31st and September 13th, which means that this is like a planned out large content release that's going to have new updated things every day that'll get people logging in every day to check it out and create interest, which is what you'd expect from a subscription-based game, is content like this regularly. So I'm excited to see this because hopefully it means they'll do more things like this going forward, where you can have players who are curious and interested and want to dive into this. And I'm sure there'll be a solve on, Wowhead at some point where someone solves all the clues and puts it up on Wowhead of here's, how you actually accomplish whatever this is. Because I think the important thing for events like this is if I miss a day, I shouldn't feel like I'm now behind everyone else and there's no way of me catching up, right? You need to actually have events like this be something where if someone can only play 2 or 3 days a week, they can still feel like they are participating and having a good time with it. And I think this is probably designed in that sort of genre of content. So, I think this will be cool. I'm excited for it. I think people will check it out, and it's a neat way to push not only interest towards the game, but obviously towards community creators, because that's what they're choosing to do with it. So, yeah, we'll see who gets clues and who you have to follow along to get those things.
Yeah, this is really interesting because they've never done anything quite like this before that I can remember. Just sort of this thing that like plays out within the game. It doesn't really launch with a patch or anything. The data's been in there, I guess, and they just turn the event on, and then they kind of maybe seed stuff within the game. They seed stuff via I don't know, streamers, I would assume. People who are like playing the game live, and then people are interacting with it, right? And there's the rewards look nice. The cool thing about it is like it sounds like once this is done, it's just in the game. Like this, it could have just been like a quest chain that came in with the patch and then that was it. But they decided to, kind of roll it out in a unique way. But it's not like a thing that if you don't do it between August 31st and September 13th, that you'll never be able to do it again. It's just you won't be doing it alongside everybody else, in the player base that's kind of, unraveling it all as it unfolds in the game and within the community. So, I guess there's something to be said for that. It could have just been a thing that was in there, and instead they're taking a bit of a different approach to roll it out, and it seems like it might be fun. I think, one of the strengths of WoW that it doesn't get maybe utilized enough is seeding stuff in old content and actually like taking advantage of the scope of the world and stuff. And this seems like a thing that might kind of fit the bill there. So I'm definitely going to check it out. I'll try to grab all these cosmetics and stuff. Why not? I mean, it seems like fun, and I'm curious to see like what they're really going to do with the rollout and everything. But I like the idea.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely keen on the idea as well. We also got some blog posts. Obviously, we're less than 2 weeks out from the release of .7. So we're going to be, or Fury the Incarnate, whatever way you want to call it, the content release. So we got some more blog posts outlining the new Forsaken and Night Elf Heritage armor. That's something you want to go and check out. They have it all sort of laid out now in a blog post. Some interesting things with the Night Elf stuff, I have to say. I didn't realize the male model was going to have just like a strap across the chest from one side to the other. I definitely knew
like a harness.
Yeah. It almost looks like if you were wearing a quiver, that would be the strap that the quiver would be attached to, but you don't see a quiver on their back. So I don't know. It's a decision. I'll have to see what it looks like in character when you actually spin it around and look at it. But if you want to check out what those look like, get in there and have a look. They also put up the tattoos. So you can actually have a look at those, as well as some of the customization for Undead. So if you're curious, check out the blog post for the new Heritage stuff coming up. We've already talked a bit about, the excitement for this, so I'm not going to dive too deep in on it, but this is definitely going to be something that you can check out, players level 50 and above, so definitely worth doing. It's always worth doing.
Yeah, for sure. This is like the official, okay, these are like the final assets. This is what it's going to look like. There's a couple screenshots of each set, and they look pretty cool. I mean, I think the Night Elf gear really looks like, specifically, it screams of Hunter to me. It looks like Hunter gear for sure. the Forsaken stuff is a little more versatile. It seems like you get more pieces overall with the Forsaken set, so you can kind of mix and match them. Also, they showcase the new flesh tones that are coming in for Forsaken, and also the new some of the new tattoos and stuff that are coming in for Night Elf. So that's cool. There's some new options, and I'm very interested to play through these Heritage Armor quest lines. I feel like the Heritage questing, I say it every time it comes up or every time I do a new one, like it's some of the best questing that exists in the game. The stories that get told through this channel of, Heritage Armor and really diving into one particular people's story and their culture and everything. I think they just hit really square. And coming off the human and orc ones that were so great, I expect kind of nothing less from these. The bar is so high, and obviously Night Elves are near and dear to my heart. So I am excited to see, like, also the Night Elves are at kind of a weird inflection point in their story right now, and I'm wondering if this will explore that at all. But yeah, very cool. We're almost done, I guess, right? So with Heritage Armors, which is kind of sad, but I mean, there could always be an opportunity to do new sets or like weapons or other kind of accessories that could go with it. They've sort of done that here and there, like with Dark Iron's got them and Blood Elf's got some extra stuff. So you never know. I mean, I think it's a great system, and even once they get all the armor sets fully rolled out, I think there's opportunities to explore it more because I think it's great content. It's just evergreen, and it really just enhances the fantasy aspect of the game.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it myself. I'm checking out those quests, and I always love the storylines, like you said. That's really what I do it for. The armor's fun. In some cases, it's really cool. But the storylines they choose to explore and the characters they choose to flesh out are always really neat to see, and sometimes have tie-ins either to major characters or will sort of set the stage for more character down the line, where you can bump into an NPC somewhere and you're like, oh, I remember you from the Heritage quest. Like, that was kind of cool. I now know more about this random NPC who's in Felwood or whatever it is, right? Like I always love that kind of stuff that ends up happening. All right. Next up, we got a blog post, obviously, around the whole Dreams and the Dream event that's going to be taking place. So what they basically say with these Dream Surges is every week, one of the 4 original Dragon Isle zones will have a Dream Surge taking place in it. And every 30 minutes, a major Waking Dream portal will open in the affected zone for group content. While active, that zone will be granted a Dreaming Winds, which is a 25% increased experience for players in that area, which is amazing. Thank you for including something like this. And basically, to help put you on the right path, you seek out Hamul Rune Totem in Valdrakken for the Surging Dreams quest, and players can go directly to the Dream Surge icon in whichever zone is affected. So obviously, it's the same thing as we normally have on the map. All that spam of stuff everywhere will be happening there. And yeah, man, I'm looking forward to checking out what this stuff can do. Sounds like the buff kind of rotates every 30 minutes. Like every 30 minutes while in the active area, a new buff will be selected for that region. Those participating in the event can vote to shape the incoming Dream Surge. So players have various useful, powerful, or chaotic buffs. I think that's kind of a cool idea. They basically have like a, vote A or B. It's just an A or B vote. It's not a multiple choice kind of thing. So yeah, by all means, I think this is going to be kind of neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the buff UI, you get some currency essentially to apply to voting, or like energy, maybe think of it as. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but you contribute that to whatever your vote choice is. And it's sort of like, it's like a small scale version of, if you remember Legion Days and the Broken Shore, and we had like the rotating buildings to build, and players would contribute a certain amount of resources to build a particular building next. It's kind of like that. Imagine shrinking that down to something like super bite-sized. And yeah, every 30 minutes, it rotates, and there's 2 different choices. And yeah, some of the buffs are kind of wacky from what little I saw on PTR. So
well, even the vote they have here has like a fairy dragon or a life bloom icon, and I'm like, I don't know what those 2 are going to be, but there's so right. if it means there's a ton of fairy dragons all over the place, cool, let's do it. Let's go with that buff.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know what that one does. There's a lot you could do. If it's fairy dragon themed, it could be like, hey, you like phase out, take any damage or something while you're phased, or who knows? I don't know what it is, but it's very the theming here is very like Emerald Dream versus Druids of the Flame sort of thing is kind of what we're doing here. So I think this is going to be cool. This should be super grindable, which is my main thing with time rifts, and a lot of the other timed events. When the week starts, like this should just be a thing you can basically go do. Like you're only going to be 30 minutes away from the next Waking Dream portal. And if the Waking Dream portal isn't up, there's other stuff to do out there. It's, non-max level character friendly, which is awesome. So the thing here is going to be, you need participation in order for this to really work, because stuff needs to be dying when the event is active, when the portal is up. You got to be filling that bar. So if there's like 2 people in your shard, then it's not really going to feel too good to do. But I think overall, like this should be a good catch-up mechanic if you have like low geared tunes that you want to get in there and either finish leveling up or get started. Just get them some gear, get them your season 2 4-piece or whatever. You will be able to. It sounds like weekly you can get a really good piece of gear for an outdoor activity, and then you can grind up like not as good gear for outdoor activities. But also, if you're grinding up, there's mounts and pets and stuff. So that's cool too. Like I think there will be a lot of reasons to do it. Hopefully, there's a method to like transfer your stuff around if you're like playing multiple characters. But I don't know. I mean, it might be so grindable that it doesn't matter. It's just like, okay, bring out whatever tune you're actually trying to deal with and then get what you get and then you're done. But yeah, overall, I mean, this should be the launch pad into 10.2, right? Like this is the main sort of power granting content that's coming in at the end of season 2. If you're playing in-game stuff already, this may not represent a lot of power for you. If you're a raider, a PvP, or a high-end, dungeon player, and you don't care about the collectibles, then there's probably not much on offer here, unless you have another character to level up and kit out. And I think hopefully that'll be like somewhat streamlined and feeling pretty good, because I would like to take advantage of it. I have a lot of tunes and really bad gear that I didn't get all the way caught up in at the end of season 1. Like I didn't quite max out Forbidden Reach before it rolled over. So if this is a little more streamlined, that would be cool too. So yeah, looking forward to checking these out. The XP buff is awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah.
It's just like it adds a lot of variety to the leveling process, and it speeds you up. It's a nice combo. It's like you don't have to do the same old thing. You can go do the new thing on the tune that's not max level, and you level faster as a result. Like that's a really nice addition.
Well, the greatest part about that is it means they are actually tuning the content based around that being content for leveling, right? It's not a situation you're going to walk in. You shouldn't be getting one shot by mobs or steamrolled by just you trying to fight one thing by yourself. That shouldn't be happening because the content's designed around characters being able to level up. So hopefully it's scaling properly and things are working properly, because that's what it's supposed to do. Whereas some of these other events, you can walk in and go, ooh, actually, I should be a higher level before trying to fight these things one-on-one. I need to kind of rely on these much more geared people around me to sort of help these things die so that I can get the loot so I can catch up. And so I like that this is designed that way. Also some cool rewards, right? There's like the renewed Magma Mammoth mount. There's the Dustwing Ohuna mount. You got some pets with Cheddar and Crimson Swoglet and the Dream Surge Remnant and the Friend Surge Defenders. So certainly be sure that you're checking out the events, because there's some fun rewards that get in there too. The Friend Surge Defenders call a trio of adorable friends from the Emerald Dream to your side. And it's literally like these cute little green phased creatures that hang out with you, like on your shoulders and above you. Very cool little fun stuff that they're putting in there for toys and pets and mounts. So definitely worth checking out. Important to have good rewards.
It seems like is it a toy? It's a consumable? I don't know what it is. Maybe a toy. It's almost like when they do hatching of the hippogriffs or something, right? And the hippogriff just chills with you for a week. It's kind of like that, except it's more critters, and it's a
duck, a fairy dragon, and like a flying squirrel that hang out with you is what it looks like.
Yeah, and it's like Emerald Dream theme, so it's a bit more magical. It seems cool. I mean, it's again, this is the kind of thing where it's like, if you're maxed out and you don't care about this, then you just don't have to do it, which seems to be becoming sort of a problem for some people. I feel like I'm starting to hear some things like this expansion is like Warlords of Draenor, which is mind-boggling to me. But what those players are saying is there's no power grind, and there really isn't. But there's plenty of stuff to do that is cool. It's just if you don't care about it because it doesn't power up your character to a very high level, then I guess to you there is nothing to do.
Yeah, there's no Azerite power or anything like that, right? That's really what you're getting at. Is there's no regular reward on a daily basis that goes towards a powerful item, whether it's your weapon or a necklace or whatever it was from previous expansions that we know of, that you're getting rewarded for doing tasks playing the game. Yeah, there's nothing like that, which, you and I have both talked, even though it's a controversial topic for a lot of people, how that makes us play the game more often. It just does. Like, it just innately, as who we are as players, enjoy logging into the game and doing our 1.5 hour circuit of gathering up the things we needed to gather because we felt we needed to do them and we wanted to do them, and it made our character more powerful on a regular basis. So, it felt like we were contributing to something. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't have that. When they announced that expansions weren't going to have that, everyone cheered and thought that was a great thing. I'm just putting it out there. So,
yeah. It's tough, right? It's not because we've definitely seen like bad implementations of AP,
yes, we have.
Like 8.0, but we've also seen ways to do it, I think, that are not quite as odious and give the players that care about it an opportunity to do the things they want to do, and players that don't want to have to worry about it don't get left too far behind, but they still have some goals. And I think throwing the entire system out was, for me, it was a downside for sure, because I liked it and I liked being able to make incremental progress on my character all the time. But I mean, a lot of players were happy about it going away, and it is all the way away now. I mean, we had some stuff you had like the anima thing in Shadowlands, which was just so poorly implemented and just felt so terrible. I can't couch it any other way than that. It was just bad. Like, you had to grind all this up just to unlock basic features of the expansion, and then the only other thing to do with it was to buy cosmetics that, like, honestly, I don't think that they really fit in WoW that well. When I'm back in, now I'm in Dragon Isles and I hit like a random mount or something or a pet or whatever, and it's like Shadowlands themed. It's like, this doesn't belong in here, or I'm in Kalimdor and end up on my robot mount from Zereth Mortis. It's like, what? I don't know, man. It didn't land, and that was the whole bent of what you were supposed to be grinding. The anima grind turned a lot of people off, and it's like, it's not even really valuable. So why do you even care about it?
Well, that was my issue, right? Is like, you'd end up with tons and tons of anima, and you'd be like, okay, but what am I using this for?
Nothing interesting.
It wasn't character power. It was cosmetic. So I get people who want to get all of the cosmetics for all of the different factions with something that would take a lot of anima, and there was a lot of grinding involved in that, but that isn't necessarily what all players want. Some players feel good just being like, hey, you know what? Today I got 0.03% stronger. And you're like, okay, and I'll do that tomorrow and the day after and the day after. And then next thing you know, I'm 20% stronger because I did it for 2 months or I did it for a month or whatever it is, right? Like, that's something that's noticeable and feels good and feels like you're, rewarding. And I feel like that stuff should be account wide when they do it, right?
I think there are ways that they could bring it back in a less odious way. What they've kind of done in this expansion is taken that concept of anima overall and made it much more compartmentalized, because you have all of these different rewards from different factions or different events, and you get the currency from participating directly in that event. And the Dream Search thing is an example of that, So I think it's okay. I think it's an okay way to do it, but I guess the problem there is you do have the perception from some players who really are just couldn't care less about the cosmetic angle, or it's like, well, there's nothing to do in this expansion. I just raid log, and it's like, I feel like there's a ton of stuff to do. And I've been doing a ton of it, but the impact on character power overall is minimal. So I think there could be a happy medium in there somewhere. I think you could have an incremental power system that is not 8.0 AP, for example, and maybe find a balance there. But it is tricky. I mean, some players just want to raid log. For some players, the raid logging Warlords is not that big of a problem, other than we don't want a raid that lives for 14 months.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right. With that, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. We don't have any new patrons this week, but we do appreciate all of our patrons and everything they give towards the the show. You mean a lot to us, and thank you so much. And yeah, Jason, do you have anything you want to say to our patrons?
I just want to say thanks. I mean, the support for the show has been amazing over the years, and I mean, we would not be producing the show on any kind of a basis at all, let alone a weekly consistent basis without your support. So thank you all so much as we move into, year 8 of us doing the show together and year 7 of the Patreon campaign. So, I mean, it's been a long time. And the support over the years has been substantial. So thank you all.
Yeah. And so today I'll give a special shout out to Alianis, Arajian, Butter, Celian, Kapawi, Max, Shorel, and Vespin. Thank you so much for everything that you specifically give. We appreciate you and the tiers that you donate at, but we do appreciate all of our patrons. So thank you, everyone who supports the show. Man, oh man, it certainly keeps us running every week. Even though some weeks we end up on a Thursday, which I don't like, guys. Just like for the record, I prefer the Tuesday records that we had going for so long. They were wonderful. Unfortunately, work is work and life is life, and things change over time. So yeah, thank you so much. Another great way to support the show is leave us a 5-star review over on there on your iTunes and your Apple Podcasts. They really help out our show. They help more people find the show, and we like reading them here live. This one comes in from Zero Divide 75, entitled "Podcast Crack for All Types WoW Players." Whether you are a hardcore raider or a casual player, this podcast is a must. Spencer and Jason produce a methodical and professional podcast covering everything you need to know about the current retail WoW. The format of the show informs you of the current events, changes, and points of interest to help you get the very best out of your World of Warcraft playing time. They don't shy on their opinions and give advice and suggestions on how to maximize your time in Azeroth. I highly recommend to download an episode and find out for yourself. Just don't blame me if you get addicted. Well, I appreciate that, Zero Divide 75. Thank you so much for the review. It means a lot, and I'm glad that we are your dealer of choice, I guess, is the best way to put this.
It's certainly a way.
I appreciate the reviews. They mean a lot to us, and I am glad that you're enjoying the WoW time and that we're helping put out a podcast every week that you enjoy listening to. And it's been going on, as Jason said, for quite some time now, and we don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. It's just going to be how much BlizzCon coverage we get is still up in the air. We're still waiting on the WoW team to get back to us on WoW Blizzard stuff for BlizzCon.
Yeah, Zero, thanks for taking the time to write in. I feel like, this expansion has been, it's been a little weird because there is so much stuff. There have been so many patches already, and there's so many little things that get added to the game. And, I feel like, part of the point of the show is helping people navigate that and like what's important in the game right now. We've always kind of felt that way, but that's normally a process that rolls over about once every 6 months, not once every 10 weeks. So it's been a little weird. We've talked a lot over the years about how the show is like a time capsule sometimes. And it's like, I feel like that is more the case than ever, because what the game was like in March doesn't even really remotely resemble what it's like right now in August. So it's been weird. It's not a complaint. It's been a lot different covering this expansion because there is so much to know about it. I can't imagine going in blind as like a relatively new player, fresh player, whatever, not doing like a lot of research or anything. And then you just like hit level 70 in Dragonflight. Like, what happens to your map standing in Feldraken at that point? And how do you know what's even important to do? And I think it's cool to have that accelerated kind of rollout of content, and like there's always some little thing to go check out and do and some little wrinkle that they're adding. But I do feel like that may mean that if you're not a really super engaged player and you're playing week in and week out, or even if you are but you just don't have time to like explore the stuff outside of your normal routine, like you kind of need a hand navigating it sometimes. Like, what do I need to pay attention to, and in a way it's like a good problem to have, but I feel like the game could also offer some more tools to help guide players through it. But I guess the fact that it doesn't gives us a niche to talk about it. So it's just been a lot different
Yeah.
I think with Dragonflight because of all these little updates all the time.
Yeah, it has. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 593 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can go over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. We are creeping up on episode 600. My goodness, we're trying to get it in there before BlizzCon stuff happens. So we might do another bonus episode here or there. Still reaching out to some folks to see if anyone has some time to fit in their schedule over the next month or so to get that in. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on X at thestartingzone or over at thestartingzone.com/discord to hop into our Discord channel. We have a shop over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. You can check out all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of stuff. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me, as always, is over on Twitter. I will not call it the other thing.
All right.
Although I guess if you go there, you can find me there too. But
Yep.
you can find me on Twitter. And you can, check out the video channels at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. But streams are kind of suspended. I've been having just brutal problems with my ISP. And at this point, I'm convinced that they just don't want me to stream anymore. And I'm being heavily throttled. So streams are probably on hold for a bit while I let that settle in. And yeah, if you want to come say hi, you can find me over on Twitter at Shieldwald as well. You can also find me on Blue Sky if you look hard enough, but I'm not really using that yet. But I am over there.
Yeah, I'm also over on Blue Sky as well, as one of those things you can check out. I'm also on Twitter, I guess I'll say it this time. I've used X earlier. I'll use Twitter now, at Spencer_Downey, or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or on youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.